Okay. Hi, folks. I'm Andy Lafreniere, and I'm here today with Charlene Lovett and George Coccavero. Charlene is a member of the Claremont School Board, and George is a longstanding member of the Claremont community and taxpayer. We all are, as a matter of fact. And we're here today to discuss a little bit more about the Johnson Controls Energy Upgrade Project as it relates to Article 4 with the Stevens High School renovation project. There's been a lot of questions in the community about what this project is, how it works, what it isn't, and we thought we'd shed a little light today on some of that by having a discussion that you could view here. So Charlene, why don't you get us started by just giving us a little summary of this project and what it's all about.
Well, the summary of the project with Johnson Controls is we have an opportunity here to make a huge capital investment into our school district with regard to our energy efficiency. And as you well know, we have 6 school buildings that comprise the school district. We have no money, so to speak, in the capital reserve fund. And all of our buildings are aging. In fact, we have boilers in the middle school that are 50 years old. We have boilers in the high school that are 100 years old. And without any money in the capital reserve fund, we have no capital to depend on to make these changes, and they have to be made because in the high school, of the 4 boilers that are now 100 years old, only one works consistently, and even then, that's not sufficient enough for the size of the building because we had students in January when we had that cold snap sitting in the cafeteria. It was 39 degrees. So we don't have much more time. We are on borrowed time. So as a school district, we're looking for a way to, how do we make the capital investments that are needed to be made? But right now, we have so much that needs to be done. We have the renovation that we're talking about at the high school. We have other facility issues at the middle school. And we're really throwing out money out the window because it's just not efficient, and our operating costs are much higher than they need to be. So here we have an opportunity at the same time during this vote on March 12th to both renovate the high school and also make this capital investment into these school buildings that will in turn reduce our operational costs and will save money. The difference between these two is that the renovation bond for the high school is a 20-year bond in which we need to get 60% of the majority. Mm-hmm. But the Article 4, which is the Johnson Controls agreement, energy savings, they call it an energy performance contract, that requires no money from the taxpayers because what you do is whatever money you save from these changes, these capital investments into the schools, that is what's used to pay the payment, the annual payment. And because it's a different type of financial animal, you don't need a 60% vote, majority vote, you need a majority vote. So if we got 50.5% of the population voting yes, we would get the performance, we would go forward with a performance. There's been a lot of discussion about the figures on the warrant article 4, about up to $7 million and a savings of at least $270,000. And the reason why there's been that, fluctuation in the numbers and it's not specific, it says up to $7 million rather than $7 million, is because we were not able to complete the engineering study prior to the vote. So we're not sure what that up to figure will be. According to law, the way the warrant article is written, it will be no more than $7 million. But the thing to remember is Johnson Controls will not put any more money into the capital improvements if they can't save a certain amount of money in how it runs energy-wise. Because they're on the dotted line, there's a guarantee that if their changes to the buildings do not result in these savings, then they will write to the district a check covering the difference.
So let me just see if I can back up a little bit. So Johnson Controls is in a sense guaranteeing a certain amount of savings annually over the course of 20 years.
Right.
Not just in Stevens High School, but in all the district's schools that they're going to be touching.
Right.
And on any given year, if the savings estimates that ultimately are provided once they finish the engineering studies that they've already started are not met, Johnson Controls is on the hook for the guarantee to make sure that the taxpayers are not putting additional money out there to cover.
That's correct.
this
And
process.
that guarantee is as good in the first year of the contract as it is in the 19th year of the contract. So there's accountability as far as Johnson Control is concerned through the entire life of the contract. But if you want to know more about what type of company this is and its standing in the corporate community, we should talk to George.
Absolutely. Now, George, you are the business manager at Mascoma High School. Mascoma Valley Regional School System, right?
Yes.
Up in Enfield.
Been
And
there 11 years.
right, and you have no ties to Johnson Controls of any kind? There's no
No, I
corporate
have-
donors or anything else involved?
No, I have no relationship other than on a business basis.
Okay.
I've been dealing with Johnson for 10 years in my position. They've handled the controls for our heating, and they're handling for that whole 10-year period and for at least 10 years before that. In that entire time, I've never had a reason to even have a disagreement with them. They're a very professional group. Their service people are very well trained. If they say they're going to do something, they do it. About a little over a year ago, Johnson came to us and said, "We think we can save you money." Knowing we've had a background with them, we said, "Okay, let's talk." They sat down and did a presentation and basically said, "We'd like to come in, do an energy audit on your school. If you like what you hear, we'll move forward. If you don't, no charge to you." The upfront cost was like $17,000. They did the audit, they came back, made the presentation, and without a doubt, we knew we had a winner. I mean, we could reduce our energy cost or just our reliance on oil by 80%, guaranteed, and I mean guaranteed. It's one of those things where people will say, well, it's too good to be true. Well, actually, it is, but Johnson's not in there to, they're not doing it to be nice guys. They're a business.
Right.
I mean, they did $42 billion worth of business last year. They've got 170,000 employees. I mean, they're 128 years old. This is not a fly-by-night outfit.
Right, right.
We took the opportunity to go to Rutland. We sent a group, because they did Rutland. And we sent a group composed of a school board member, my facility manager, and 2 taxpayers. Went and spoke to the Rutland town, I think it was town manager. Came back completely impressed. Absolutely nothing but positive. What people have to understand is that you can save energy and still do it in what we call a budget neutral situation. In other words, the savings will pay for the lease or the loan. You're not doing this through Johnson. People don't understand that. Johnson is not providing the financing. You can do the financing any way you want. Currently, I'm dealing with a bank. If a lease company came up with a better rate, I'd go to the lease company. If our article passes, we still have time to do what we need to do to get the best funding available for the project. In our case, we're going wood and oil. In your case, I think you're one step ahead because they're proposing wood and propane.
Right, right.
And that's even better for savings when you look at the cost of oil. But we're invested heavily in 4 in-ground tanks, 2 of which we just barely changed.
Yeah.
And it did make a lot of sense, The other issue is, I think I read somewhere that, these silos aren't going to be that pretty. And, we've got a school over there that's historic, the same as your high school. They're designing a silo that's going to fit into the decor of the school. You're not going to have this big, funny-looking, aluminum tube sticking out somewhere. They can take care of that.
Right.
In fact, if people want to see it, if you take a look at the alley between the fitness center and the block,
Right.
they converted the block to wood pellets,
Right.
60,000 square feet. He's been heating it with pellets for about 2 years now. No problems. They actually love it. So I guess the best thing I can say is there's an ethics magazine out there that's rated Johnson one of the top 5 companies in
Yeah,
the country,
that's
I
true.
think 5 years running. there's a lot of misinformation out there, and there's a lot of just negativity because there are people out there who would rather work to tear their city down than build it up. Don't fall for that.
Right.
I mean, I put 30 years into service in this community. People they know me. If I tell you this is a good deal, you can believe me. It's
Well,
a
I
good
think
deal.
all three of us here are taxpayers, and
Yeah.
we're not interested in creating a situation that's even worse.
No.
I think we all of us and all those involved recognize the importance of this project for the kids, the schools, the community, all of it.
Basically, what you're saying is there's $7 million on the table. And my interest as a taxpayer is I want that $7 million. If I can save that, I don't pay tax on that. And that's the whole purpose. you
So
know.
this situation is one where you're either going to pay the amount of money that they're estimating through I mean, they're going to throw a whole pile of engineers and everything else at this project. I'm making an
Right,
assumption.
well, they have to do an engineering study. And the study that has been done here in Claremont, in the Claremont School District, is just preliminary at this point. So they had some engineers walk through, they made a preliminary assessment, enough where we could put a figure on the warrant article, because we had to have that turned in legally by a certain date. But the work's not done. And so they have to bring in more engineers. Now they're going to really dig in, and they're going to look at every component that contributes to energy costs. And they're going to balance, if we pull this out, will we get enough savings to make the replacement worthwhile? So they have to do that analysis. What I find really compelling about the credibility of the company is the fact that they are waiving their engineering study costs if this article were not to pass.
Right.
Wow.
So, I mean, that doesn't happen very often.
No.
And there was a lot of negotiation going back and forth on that, but they really believe that the savings are significant enough in the school district that they're willing to take the risk, and that's substantial. I mean, they're taking their engineers, they're willing to have their engineers come down, and it could all be for naught if the article doesn't pass.
I was just going to ask, what is the significance of having both Article 2, the Stevens High School renovation, and Article 4, the Johnson Controls District Energy Upgrade Project? What is the significance of having both of those pass?
The significance is the only thing that Johnson Controls is doing in the high school is replacing the boilers. But say Article 4 does not pass, what you want, in order to install the most cost-effective boiler, you have to bring the heat load down, the load on the boiler down, which means you have to do the windows, and you have to do the extra insulation, and you have to do all of these other things that are included in the renovation bond. If those things are not included, then you're going to need, your load on your boiler system is going to be higher. So you're not being as economical as you could be.
Which means you would need a bigger boiler, more
Right,
expense, and then
right.
you've got a whole savings issue that maybe the ratios are off, and
Right.
suddenly the project becomes not quite as attractive.
These are meant to dovetail.
Right.
To give you the biggest bang for the buck. And unfortunately, there's been a lot of misstatements in the papers. You know, the people will say, well, the renovation bond includes all of the above plus the boilers, or the Johnson Controls includes windows and insulation, the boilers for the high school, and that's not true. For the high school, just the high school, the only thing that Johnson Controls is going to do is the boiler system replacement, and the distribution system, everything that's
Associated with it.
accompanied with a boiler system. The middle school, because the renovation bond has nothing to do with any other building other than the high school, the middle school is ripe for change in that I think the windows are single pane. They flop open if the wind blows. The boiler system's 50 years old, and it's an expensive type of boiler system. So they can make the change to the boilers, do the windows, improve the insulation in order to get the size of that boiler system down as small as possible. And then until their engineering studies completed on the elementary schools, we're not quite sure what they're going to recommend doing. But again, there's no risk to the taxpayer.
Well, and that's what's interesting to me, is that even though they haven't finished this preliminary engineering study, or the final engineering study, the results are guaranteed regardless
Right.
of what the result is.
The thing you've got to look, exactly, that's the point. And they're not going to step up and say, we can save you $7 million. If they can save you $5 million, then they write you a check for $2 million. They
Right.
won't stay in business for 128 years
Right.
doing anything like that. The other part of this that you have to understand is that the savings that they're quoting, well, first of all, changing the boiler, et cetera, has lowered what you're going to have to borrow or bond for the high school.
Right.
That money would have been in the high school renovation.
Right.
Right.
Secondly, the benefits you're getting are guaranteed after the first full year that the project's completed. So everything you gain in there, for example, they go into the middle school, change all the lights, change all the windows, change all the switches, and walk out to the next school. Those savings are yours.
Right.
They're not even counted in the money they're telling you you can save. That's what they call incremental savings. So you're going to pick up incremental savings at each school as it comes online, and then after the first full year, you'll see the benefit. This is just a great opportunity for this district to upgrade its facilities at no cost.
Right.
Yeah, it's a 20-year lease, bond, whatever, it won't be a bond, but it's a 20-year payback. At the end of the 20 years, every penny of the savings comes back to the district.
And the bottom line is the money the savings amounts that we're using to pay for the performance bond would have been paid out in energy costs anyway. And that's the difference. You're using those savings to pay this down.
There's
And-
one more, too, and I think you'll find you're the same way. Once we got involved with Johnson, we applied for energy savings money through the state of New Hampshire for their energy efficiency programs. We've already been accepted. We'll get $120,000 more. That's not even calculated in the savings. I mean, we paid Johnson 10 cents a square foot for an audit. The state will reimburse me at 18 cents.
No kidding.
Wow.
I mean, you can't lose on this one.
Right,
You know?
right. I found it interesting. We saw I know we're pushing our time limit here, so just briefly, we saw a presentation from a Johnson Controls representative the other night there's an inflation aspect that we're saving as well. The information suggested that from 2000 to 2012, the inflation rate for oil, the average inflation rate for oil was 8.5% a year. The
Right.
average inflation rate for wood was 3.5% a year. And there was more volatility in oil prices year to year than there is in wood prices year to year. So not only are we saving significant amounts of money, but over time, the incremental savings in the inflation difference between how much oil will continue to inflate, assuming that it is doing that, is even more.
Well, that's an example of how conservative they are. You just said 8.5%. They've calculated our benefits with a 5% oil increase.
Right.
Okay.
And that's what they said
So,
they would
right.
do.
Yeah.
But
Right.
those were projections based on what the actual market, and I found what was interesting, Ned was, from Johnson Controls, was saying that within a year, fuel can fluctuate as much as 31%.
Yes.
It's
Right.
very volatile. And if we can reduce our dependency on fuel oil by 80%, they're quoting us 70 to 80%, that's their objective, and then reduce our energy costs on top of that by 20%. I mean,
Right.
that's
Yeah,
incredible.
it
If
is.
if we do nothing, Johnson Controls, based on our energy use today, say that our energy cost per year will go from, currently we're at 600,000, it'll go up to 1.2 million, I believe, in 20 years. I mean, we can't afford not to,
double.
we can't afford not
afford
to
it.
do anything.
This is a really, really unique program. Well, it's not so unique, and we have thousands of schools around the country that have undergone the same project.
Oh, yeah.
But it is an opportunity for Claremont, and it would be a shame to let this pass.
Again,
Yes.
somebody piled $7 million on the table.
You better
You're
take
not
it.
gonna- that's why.
better take it.
You better take it. Right.
Well, thank you, George, for your
You're
time here
welcome.
today. Charlene, thank
Thank
you. And as always,
Thanks,
we
Charlene.
would encourage all of you to make sure you get out on March 12th and vote positively for Article 2, the Stevens High School renovation, and Article 4, the Johnson Controls Energy Project. It is critical to the economic future of the city and the education future of Claremont's children. Thanks.